And when it comes to, some parties now trying to support others because they're not, or they haven't actually forwarded a presidential aspirant in this case, or presidential candidate, I will talk about the Conda Party that in the previous weeks, I think, did show some interest in supporting the ODM, candidates there. And now they're coming out strongly and saying that, they have not said or set out that they're going to be outlined to supporting the ODM party in this case. What exactly do you think about that?
Well, as we move towards the election, there will be a lot of alliances that are going to be mooted, because people also in those particular parties want to align themselves with a party that they believe can be able to secure power, so that they're also not left out of the mainstream. But in terms of the KANU, I don't think KANU had come out very clearly to state they're going to support Raila Odinga. That's a decision that must be taken by their top organ. So I don't think one or two people can stand up and say that this is the direction we are taking. But I think most of these remarks could have been taken out of context in terms of when they were campaigning in Dewa, because KANU had a strong candidate also, because the KANU candidate came number 2 in Ndiwa, which you can say is unfortunate, although the margin you cannot explain. It was neither here nor there. But in terms of when they were campaigning, politicians are bound to say anything on the campaign trail in terms of trying to lure voters to vote for them. So well, KANU has a right to state which alliance that they want to get into. They have the options to weigh whether they want to be with TNA, to support TNA, to support ODM, to support PNU. It is a decision that they themselves can take and decide. But going the way we are moving, they will need an alliance with a particular party so that they can be able to be relevant as we move towards the elections.
Right. And then now I would like to bring your attention to the ODM party specifically, and the fact that, it seems to be an area that they're concentrating basically coast region and trying to win the voters in that specific region. And I will align this to, how much interest they have shown in the MRC. Where do you think that this is heading?
Well, in terms of coast, coast province is like, you cannot say that it is dominated by a particular party. The supporters are from a particular area. It's just one of those regions that is also up for grabs by any of the presidential candidates. So in terms of ensuring that they move forward and secure the voters there, the ODM already has an upper hand, because I think it has the majority of members of parliament from that region. So in terms of trying to consolidate its votes, it's very crucial for them, because they'll require to be able to get more votes in terms of the presidential candidates to consolidate the votes that they're getting elsewhere. So for them it's crucial, because they believe, since they have a majority of members of parliament in that part of the region, they are putting more effort in ensuring that they consolidate the support that they have, so that they can be able to just add on to what they have. But also other candidates have been roaming in that particular area, because it's up for grabs. You cannot tell that the fact that ODM has majority of members, it will still remain that way. You cannot take voters for granted. It is a situation by, if you have it, you must continue to ensure that you consolidate. And when you don't have, there are those who want to make inroads. So for ODM, it's critical for them to maintain the stronghold. But for other parties, because they're also coming in, and they are other goodies that they are offering the voters and the candidates there. So it's a critical challenge for ODM. And you can see in terms of the MRC, nobody wants to walk a straight path. One day they are saying this, the other moment they are talking a different language. So it is very critical for them, because you don't know, you might put your head into the MRC thing so much, and then you burn your fingers. And that's why most of the members of parliament from Coast Province have not talked about this. They are only very silent about the issue of MRC, except I think 1 or 2 legislators who have come out to speak strongly about it. So nobody would want to be associated with an organization which had initially been outlawed, and then finally it has been given the leeway, but you still have doubts in terms of of its agenda and how it moves. If you see, I think last week, but one, we had a story whereby even there was a link between the happenings in Tana with some MRC operatives. So nobody would want to get aligned to an organization which has a name which is soiled on one area, and on the other also, you also want their support. So that's why politicians are very cautious about how they're moving towards the MRC issue.
Well, someone sends a text and says, what is your say on the Raila-Uhuru relation?
In terms of what?
You know, previously, Uhuru, I think, was visiting an area that is probably, you would say, dominated by supporters of Raila Odinga. And when he was visiting the area, he actually said he's ready to work with the Prime Minister in the future, in this case. And then later on, I think a few days later, Prime Minister Raila Odinga did say exactly the same thing. So what do you think of this relationship? Do you think it's...
If at all, let me tell you for a fact, and this you can take to the bank. If they agreed to work together in terms of the next election, we would not even have an election. It will be over. That is a fact. If they had attempted to do that, they would have silenced everything. But that is also critical. It's also neither here
but by
nor
saying they've silenced everything, are you saying that these are the top most popular contendants or contestants for the country's top seat?
Exactly. That's for a fact. It's not something that we can debate about, because if you look at the votes that you have in Central Province and what Raila also commands, if they link together, it will be game over. There will not be an election. Will just be a formality. But I cannot rule out that kind of arrangement. Believe you me, in politics, you don't rule out anything. Don't also put so much emotion that this candidate can never work with that candidate. That in politics does not work. You do not have permanent enemies, and you do not have permanent friends. If it happened that Raila and Uhuru announced that they're working together, it should not come as a shock or a surprise to anybody. Neither can any candidate can work with anybody. So you should never have these feelings, so hard feelings on the ground that nobody cannot work with anybody. So that is possible. It can happen, and it is possible. It only depends on the kind of interest those politicians would derive from such an arrangement. If for sure, take a very hypothetical guess that Uhuru would want to support Raila for presidency, and then they enter into an arrangement that he only serves one term so that he can, because Uhuru is still young. This is last time for him to take to go for this seat, because in the next seat he will be way above 70 years, so he will not be able to contest. So if that kind of arrangement comes in, to me, it will not be a shock.
Are we having that conversation in 2012?
Because I am telling you, it is possible.
If we're going to look at that, we are also going to refer to history, where, we have seen that maybe there could have been some sort of agreement that, after 5 years, someone else is going to be running for, the presidency, and then it has actually not actualized.
That's what I'm saying. That's why I said it was just a hypothetical guess in terms of if that happens, because it is possible. They can enter into that kind of an arrangement, and and they would agree, and because that's what I'm saying. Raila, after this, he cannot be able to run for the presidency again. But Uhuru has all the time, because he's still young, and he has all the time to do that. So if that happens, it is possible it can work. It is possible that arrangement can happen. And it's something that also has been talked about within the political circles. So nothing should shock you in terms of the alliances that are going to take place in the next election. So even Ruto himself can work with Raila. Don't think it is impossible. Whereas people in the Rift Valley are saying, no, this can never happen, they parted ways. That is just a talk in terms of in the general air. But behind the scenes, anything is possible. So you would not know how, you cannot put to blame that this is cast in stone, that this is how it's supposed to be. No, politics keeps changing every other minute. So anything is possible, Doreen.
Well, in this case, I would like to bring us to the final bits of our discussion this morning. And I would like us to pay some attention to the youth in this country as well as the role they play in elections. Just using the example of the recently concluded by-elections in Kangema, in Kajiado, the youth participation has not been that much. And this probably should scare a bigger number of, the contestants or the aspirants for vying for different political positions. Where do you think that the low participation of the youth is coming from?
It is very worrying, Doreen. Even when we saw the by-elections, during the campaigns and the rallies, it's the youths who are flocking those rallies, and they are all over the place in the stadiums. But when it came to voting, I was seeing old women with the bakoras going to the polling stations to vote, and it's a trend that was extremely disturbing. That shows you that either these youths are all over, they don't have a voter's card. They're just there for campaigns, and they are not registered as voters,
right,
which is very worrying, because for any campaign, any politician who is addressing campaign and has that kind of multitude of people, it should worry him or her when it comes to the crunch time, when it's the real thing for them to cast their votes. Those fellows are not there. So it's also incumbent upon them to be able to impress upon, to put this to their supporters, that so long as you are here, make sure you go and register as a voter, because the decision for you to take me to the next level will be decided by your vote. But if the politicians themselves are the ones with this multitude of people, and they are not impressing upon the youths to take the voter's card, then that is also worrying. The second thing is, then brings us to the issue again of the civic education. Also, that shows, in terms of voter registration, then IBC also has failed, because it shows they have not carried out a rigorous process to ensure that the people people register as they should register, as many as possible, because they need to carry out a vigorous campaign and ensure that people, the youth especially, register as voters. That trend should not be witnessed when we get to the elections, because it's going to give a very wrong impression in terms of how we are conducting our elections. You have all these multitudes of people in a rally, but when it comes to vote, you have almost half the number of the people going to cast their votes.
Right. I'll use an example of a country like Uganda. During the general elections, the youth were also blamed for minimal participation in the country's politics, and they actually were blamed for spending more time doing desktop activation instead of actually literally participating in the general elections. And this is a trend that is also, I should say, in Kenya too. And getting rid of this low participation or even lack of interest in political affairs amongst the youth could be something that maybe the youth think they do not want a repeat of what the elder leaders or the elder leaders have been showing in the past years. Do you think that the youth lack an interest in politics generally in Africa?
Well, that could be said. That could be true to some extent. But the fact that they are not going to cast their vote should worry even those in political positions, and even like I said, the people in the electoral body, because there has to be a deliberate and separate campaign to impress upon the youth that the fact that they're going to, decision of having leaders is through the ballot. That there has to be a deliberate campaign to ensure, because there are times when you have these many road shows and stuff like that, and it's the youths who are participating. If we can start from that particular perspective to ensure that we use those road shows, we use those entertainment situations that the youth gather, and ensure there's a deliberate campaign to register those youths as voters, that will be the starting point. Because once they see that, because when they don't go to vote and things go wrong and you start blaming other people, who will you be blaming? Because if you never took part in decision making, how do you expect to lay blame on the leadership of a particular country? So it is for them to be deliberately pushed to ensure that they register as voters, and there also should be a campaign to make them understand that it is their vote that will count in terms of who the leaders that they're going to bring in the political power that will matter. If that doesn't happen, then things are going to be different. And even in the next election that we have, you can see there's also a deliberate effort to bring the youth on board in terms of representation, because there are certain seats that have been set aside for the youth. Maybe with that kind of motivation, we could see more youths participating in the election. So let's wait and see, but we can't just hold back and wait for things to happen. There has to be a deliberate campaign to make sure that the youth are enticed to be able to come to the voter registration and register as voters and be able to decide the destiny of the nation.
Well, we'll wind up by looking at, the text messages coming through that actually did come through from the various issues we were talking about. Someone here, I'll just flash back to what we started with. There was the teachers, strike, and then the industrial action and how they've decided to go back to work. Someone here is saying why industrial courts found of calling strikes illegal is a question you're asking. Why are industrial courts found of calling strikes illegal? And someone here is saying, what about the students who have been affected for all these 3 weeks? Don't the teachers as well also have something to apologize for? And teachers, parents and learners to sue government, should sue government for compensation. This is coming in from someone who doesn't leave your names as well. And what do you say about the on-teachers retirees pay who won their case? And well, there are quite a number of them. It's unfortunate the government will not listen unless I'm twisted at the detriment of poor students, is coming in from Wanjohi in Thika. Well, there are quite a number of them that came in regard to, the ongoing strikes and now how, everyone now thinks that the government does not listen until something serious happens. But well, let's also look at some of the others that came in. Community policing isn't the solution to security. It's only supposed to give information, which mostly the police have. They need to forget some of their primitive culture and learn to respond and act positively rather than strategizing for bribery from the public or even the criminals. And someone here is saying it is very worrying because no voters cards, no civic education, plus incompetence or an incompetent police force, then greedy politicians who are not concerned. And when hell breaks loose, it's the majority who are going to suffer. It's coming in from Grace in Mombasa. And then someone here is saying everybody is blaming government. Who is government? Executive, Kibaki, Raila, or cabinet? Please clarify. This is coming in from Dr. Combo. And we also have someone here who is saying, do you think we are fair enough to our security personnel? When they apply intensive force, people complain, and a place like Tana River was worse. When a police officer is killed, they don't talk much about it. And when by accident in the line of job, that is peacekeeping, one person is injured, it must be the story of the day. And what does the government do to these, departments concerning their salary now that they mind other departments other than the police? This one is quite very sensitive here. And someone is saying police are already on the go slow. Tell that to the police commissioner. And one is saying here, what if violence got to happen again? What will the citizens do? Because we shall suffer a lot if we're going to have the same stalemate yet again. And we have another who is saying, in a situation like Tana, how do we deal decisively before any violence has occurred and be seen not to have abused human rights of the parties concerned? Well, I guess I'll have your final remarks for the day today before we can close the show.
First of all, there's a time I talked about the issue of the industrial court. It was very, very worrying because what I said is that with the situation of the teachers, the industrial court, I mean, even the judges do not live in a vacuum. They should have been alive to the fact of what is happening within the country. This is not something that was destined to go to the industrial court and the government using the industrial court to stifle the process. These are the judges should have been alive to, whereas they use the law. but they should also be alive to the fact of what is happening. This is a political problem. It's a problem that has started in 1997. And the industrial court, whereas the judiciary has been reformed, they should not have allowed themselves to be misused the way they were misused by government. They should have thrown this thing on the doorsteps of government and to have the government resolve the problem. You can see this is a matter that has been sorted out just by sitting at a hotel in Gigiri here, and they managed to deal with it quickly. So this is a matter that they knew how they were going to solve it, but they were just pulling the legs of the teachers, which is very unfortunate. So when even the courts make decisions, there are certain situations whereby they're not living in a vacuum. They should be alive to the facts of what is happening within the environment and how that matter can be sorted out. They should never allow the government or other people to misuse the courts for their own good, for their own destiny. That is not the correct way to go about that. But in terms of how the situation has been resolved, it ought to have been done 3 weeks ago, not even now. So the people who ought to apologize to this country is the government, not the teachers. I doubt that the teachers would have wanted this matter to persist the way it had gone. So the government owes the Kenyans an apology. And in terms of who is the government, the buck stops with the president. He is the leader of government business. All these ministers and government officials are working at his pleasure, because he is those are political appointees. If you have with this current situation where we have the grand coalition government, the buck stops between the president and the prime minister. Those two are the ones to be held accountable when things go wrong in this country. The ministers just work because they're the ones who have appointed them to work for them. Otherwise, they will be the only ones who are working. But since they cannot be everywhere and do everything, the ministers do this job for them. So the buck stops with the two gentlemen at the moment. In a situation whereby we only have the president himself, it is the president who lays the blame. So you can't wish away and pretend that the government is amorphous. It's not amorphous. It has a structure of leadership, and it is headed by the president, and the ministers follow the vice president and all these other people. So, but in our situation, it's the president and the prime minister who should be held accountable when anything goes wrong in this particular point in time. So that is the way to go.
Right. Well, it was an honor having you in the studio this morning with us to discuss the current state of affairs and also discussing on the different issues. It was an honor. I look forward to the next time I have you in studio. Well, KTN Sunrise Live comes to a close for the day. Thank you all for watching and for your participation through the SMSs. We do appreciate. And until tomorrow, join us again on another edition of KTN Sunrise Live. I am Joy Durimbira. Have a better part of the day, and God bless.